Hello, class. My name is Robert, and I'm joined here with my partner Alex. Today, we're going to be talking about the book Silencing the Past by Michel Ralph Trujillo, published in 1995. This book talks about power and how it can silence the voices of marginalized people. So, let's get started by talking about the author.
Michel Rolf Trujillo was a Haitian-American anthropologist and historian. Trujillo received his PhD in anthropology from Johns Hopkins University in 1985 and worked as a professor of anthropology and social sciences at the University of Chicago. Trujillo unfortunately passed away July 5, 2012, at the age of 62. However, his work lives on and remains relevant in the field of Afro-Caribbean studies and Haitian history. The book is broken up into several parts. The first chapter introduces the reader to important terms and theories that Trujillo continues to explore through the rest of the text. In the second chapter, Trujillo explains how Sans Souci, an important leader in the Haitian Revolution, was excluded from the historical narrative through both the creation of a palace that bore his name and through the lack of sources created about him. The third chapter talks about the Haitian Revolution and how the West's inability to acknowledge the significance of the event caused the revolution to be systematically excluded from the historical canon. The fourth chapter talks about the discovery of America and how silences are created as history is retold and reinterpreted. The final chapter discusses the production of public history and the plans to create a history-themed Disneyland. The book culminates in an anecdote about the people of Haiti throwing Columbus's statue into the ocean, a cathartic moment that serves the conclusion well.
The theoretical basis surrounds two major ideas: power and its ability to create silences in history. These silences target people that live in the margins and keep them there. These silences can be created purposefully, as demonstrated by the story of Sans Souci, and sometimes it can be through the uneven distribution of information and neglect. And sometimes they're created despite the abundance of sources and narratives, as Trujillo puts it, like with Columbus. Rather, it is created by the interaction of people who record, store, and distribute information. So each chapter begins with a personal account that kind of sets the stage for the chapter. And then throughout the chapter, Trujillo will sprinkle in peer-reviewed articles and local histories from people people that actually lived in Haiti. And then the combination of all three of these produce kind of an earnest and honest account of the history and its application of the theories that he's proposing. But it's not without its detractors and not without its flaws, and we'll kind of talk about that a little bit more when we get into, the contemporaries of his time and what people thought about when it was released. All right, so what? What are we supposed to do with this information? Taking him at his word and research, we know and understand that these silences exist. Trujillo says we need to take it into our own hands. Given the evidence presented, it is clear that there's a problem, one that can seem insurmountable looking at a macro scale. So what do we do? As future archive professionals, our job is to make sure that we give voice to the people that have been silenced in our archives. At its strongest, Trujillo says that archival power is the power to define what is and what is not serious object of research. This starts from acquisition and continues throughout the entire process. Inclusive archives lead to inclusive information. Additionally, we can look at our existing archives and find the silences that live between the records. Trujillo states that the silences are created at 4 stages of historical production: the making of sources, the making of archives, the making of narratives, and the making of history. We are number 2 on this list, and thus can positively affect everything after us. I personally found this book to be informative and exciting. I think Trujillo had a lot of fun describing some of the, craziness that was the Haitian Revolution. And unfortunately, like a lot of people, I didn't know very much about the Haitian Revolution. I think it's kind of a blind spot. So this book really opened my eyes to the silences in my own life, and now I feel a little better equipped to spot silences in other areas as well. It has also motivated me to become part of the solution in my profession.
Yeah, so like Robert, I also really enjoyed the book. I thought Trio's two chapters on the Haitian Revolution were especially strong and thought provoking. I also enjoyed how Trio integrated elements from his own personal life into the book. However, I would have to agree with some of the critics that certain sections felt somewhat disjointed. The part about Disneyland, for example, well, really interesting, felt somewhat unnecessary. I'm not completely sure what it added to the book as a whole. However, overall, I really enjoyed it.
Trujillo is widely recognized and praised as an academic. Silence in the Past has over 9,420 hits on Google Scholar and 2,168 in our own Rutgers Library database. The most common sources are obviously historical and anthropological, but he is also quoted in a variety of scientific volumes, mostly in a sociological context. But he is not without his detractors, as we talked about in an earlier slide. Franklin W. Knight is among them. He argues that the book relies too heavily on readability and neglects the meat and potatoes of the actual historical context. He also argues that Trujillo has an over reliance on narrative and does not truly define what he means by history. These are some things to kind of keep in mind while reading, because no document is perfect, no book is perfect, and it could be argued that even this book has its own silences throughout the pages. So overall, I think this book is a great read for pretty much anyone interested in, becoming better at recognizing these things, being an ally for those that are in the margins, especially for undergraduates, and even more, especially for archivists and information professionals. Thanks for watching our presentation, guys, and we'll see you in the discussion board.